Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Writers Toolshed. If you'd like to join our writing community on Discord and get access to fantasy writing classes and books on Patreon, check the links in the description. And if you don't want to miss any future episodes, be sure to follow or subscribe. And to support the show, leave a quick rating on Spotify or iTunes and share this episode on social media or with anyone who you think may be interested. Thank you very much for listening. Enjoy the show. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Writers Toolshed. I'm your host, Richie Billing, and today I'm delighted to be joined by Benjamin Davis, co-founder of Chill Subs and a very successful author in his own right. Benjamin, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I'm very grateful for you giving up your time to be here. Chill Subs, there's an awful lot going on over there, an awful lot of work be going on behind the scenes, loads of cool new features, and I mean, first of all, I just want to thank you for making it because I've used Chill Subs as a platform probably for about 18 months. And before that, finding publishers for short stories, it was a bit of a chore. You'd have to set aside time in your diary. You'd be like, I need at least 2 or 3 hours just to scour social media, try and find all these lists, go through these horrible lists that are completely outdated. I actually used to keep a list on my website just because I couldn't be bothered going through it all. So I just threw it on there and that quickly became outdated. And then there was something like Geotrope came around, which was, we were talking a little bit before, it's quite clunky. It's a bit ugly to use. It's not very user friendly and it's also paid. So when Chill Subs popped onto the scene, it was it's pretty game changing to be honest. And some of the features that you've got, like the sub club. I mean, I would say like last year I had my best year for short stories, and I had sub club subscription for a few months of that, and I'd say it's contributed to the finding a bit more success. So I think it is a bit of a game changer. So yeah, thank you very much for making it, Benjamin.
Of course. Yeah, Sub Club is a bit of a funny story. So Chusub started 4 years ago, and the entire website is custom coded and custom designed, which is great. It means we have a lot of control, and it's really beautiful, and we get to have something that nobody else has. One of the things, the drawbacks is that whenever you want to launch something new, it requires the entire team to create it. So like, we all, and especially early on, it was a very small team. There were only about 5 of us. And so it's like, okay, in order to kind of like have a content arm, we needed a blog, right? So we needed, and we didn't have we didn't really have like the resources to do it properly because we were too busy trying to kind of clean up everything else. Because also very, very early on, it was just Karina and I, and it was just like we would have a crazy idea and we would just build it. Like there was a whole like 6-month period where we had a social media that we launched the day after Elon Musk bought Twitter because we thought that it would be funny to create like an alternative, like a different place for like the writing community to go, and we called it UG, and it was just like basically a Twitter clone that was on the website. But then like as we like we got a little bit bigger, and then I don't know if it was kind of like some Chinese scraper bots kind of went in and got, because the social media, heavy air quotes, kind of was so ridiculously and poorly coded because it was just like a kind of a fuck it decision that it shut the entire website down because it kind of like got caught up trying to scrape all of the other stuff. So eventually we like shut that down. But so we spent a lot of time cleaning up like the beginning days when it would just kind of like do whatever. Now when we release things, we release a lot, but we're very intentional. Like we have different teams who work on different things. But so we had 2 things that were thing. We really needed money and we really needed a content strategy. And so I created Subclub as and this was kind of early on with Substack. This was before, lots and lots of folks were on it. And so Sub Club was actually my reaction because I had spent so much time, same as you, when I like, before Chill Subs, where I was looking for things through these outdated lists. And I really wanted to create a newsletter that just kind of like spread all of these lists, but like did it every week, focusing on what magazines that were open that week and closing that week, and like coming out with like really quality evergreen lists that would like do well, and kind of just like have it be recurring rather than just like a blog with all of these kind of lists from like 2015. I wanted to create like more higher quality versions of those, and send them through a newsletter. And that really became a big driver for the Chill Subs. Like it actually now, so Chill Subs has about 75,000 users, and then Sub Club has 62,000 subscribers. So
Nice.
like, they've really helped to kind of grow each other. So like people join Sub Club, and then anything that we share on Sub Club lists to their listing page on Chill Subs. And then when anybody joins Chill Subs website, they're prompted to join Sub Club. So then they're told like, oh, and we also have this newsletter. And so a lot of people, so it's kind of created this really nice ecosystem where Chill Subs is the big like database research center where if you want to go and you can like explore and really narrow it down. And then Sub Club is where we curate in order to kind of like give and also give our own um, opinions on magazines. So I ran that for the first 2 years, and then over this past year, I've been passing it off to Shannon, who is probably one of the people who knows the industry as well as I do, and just being so involved in magazines and kind of being able to have an opinion about some random niche magazine that like
Yeah.
no one has sort of. And so she's taken now it's fully passed off. Now we just meet once a week and connect. And otherwise we're actually about to hire a new columnist there, Danielle Bukowski. She's a literary agent. She's going to be taking over our agents column, because we really want to start providing like more professional advice to folks. So there'll be like a Q&A element to it with this literary agent every other week, along with like recommended agents. So we're kind of changing up that content to be more of educational, more kind of like bringing a person, not just giving the submission opportunities, but also trying to help people with finding an agent. Because I think as hard as it is to figure out, where to go and like what agent is the right fit, but it's also kind of like knowing if you're ready for one, and kind of like what they're seeing too much of and or not enough of. So it's exciting. We're always looking for like new ways. And then we've got so many bullshit plans for the year. We were doing like a whole rebrand because like we've never particularly loved the name Sub Club. So and then so recently I get a text from a friend who sends me an announcement from Subway, because Subway just came out with their new membership program. So like you eat like 6 subs and you get like another sub, and their membership program is called Sub Club. So
I
anytime you
pig you on
Google
their
Sub
back,
Club,
pick you back on their traffic.
right? I know that's what we'll do. We'll just like kind of get the Subway diet of followers. But
So
we'll see.
are you going for a full rebound then, a sub club?
Yeah, I think that's what we'll do. I think we'll do a big rebrand, and it's something we've wanted to do for a long time. It was kind of a stopgap measure. Like we were
Yeah.
never so when we first launched it, like we did a whole campaign where like we all kind of lived, because there was no way we were ever going to grow this company if we had been living in like the States or something like that. So we were living in like this village outside of Tbilisi in like the country of Georgia,
Yeah.
and so like Karina and Nikita lived in the city in Tbilisi, and Shell and I lived in Minsketa, and and it was when we launched Sub Club, that's where we were, and we did this whole thing where we all got sandwiches, and like there was like pictures of us eating sandwiches, and there was a whole sandwich pun thing that was happening for so long. So like, and we would interview people and then have their favorite sandwich, and then we had like different lists called like the chicken parm list, and it was like this. And then just over time, we dropped like the sandwich pun, and then it was connected to the Chill Subs membership. So like Sub Club was like the Chill Subs membership, and then
Yeah.
over time, we've moved Sub Club into its own distinct brand and like slowly extricated it from like Chill Subs. And same thing with the Forever Workshop. Like Forever Workshop, it like has become its own brand. And so that we have these kind of these three. We kind of think of them like, Chill Subs kind of like the parent company, but then they're like these two kind of satellite companies, and we've mostly extricated everything. They have their own teams. We share like design. But yeah, and so we really want to make it its own brand, and we want to turn it into like very much like a publication style, and have some more columnists and have these lists, and we're launching it with like a whole bunch of stuff. We'll have like a new designer who's gonna do like the branding for it, so it'll be fun. It'll be we have to do it after AWP because we can't do it before AWP because we've got to print all the materials before we go to AWP, and so like we would have to rebrand it. We have to like get the materials printed in the next couple of weeks. So
Yeah.
so probably in mid April, early April, we'll do the rebrand. So you'll see that, and it'll be
Nice.
fun.
All systems go. So how did
Yeah.
it start for you? And what was your journey been like? I mean, yeah, I understand you wrote poetry and you still write it actively, do you? Or is Chill Subs absorbing all your time?
Yeah, it does. So I mean, I've been writing online for quite a long time. I first started submitting to literary magazines when I was in college. What's fun is I'm more inclined to be like I prefer to write fantasy and science fiction than
Nice.
like literary works. Like that's actually more what I'm interested in, and it's more what I read in my free time.
Yeah.
But um, so shortly after school, I like published a little bit when I was younger, and then I started getting more seriously into it because I was debating whether or not I wanted to go back to school for an MFA.
Yeah.
So I had started like I would submit kind of on and off over the years. And then when I was like submitting again, and I had like dabbled in different things, and I did get into like poetry and got into like writing prose poetry. But where that came from, so Nikita, who's the designer, so I only started writing creatively like online in a bigger way in like 2015 or 16. I moved to Russia. So I moved to Russia. I moved to St. Petersburg, and I had saved up some money, and so I was just kind of like, oh, okay, like um, this is nice. I have some time, and I wanted to write a story every day for a year. That was my goal. I was like, okay, I want to write a story every day for a year, and I had met Nikita, who was there, and he's an artist at the time. That's what he was. I mean, he was working in a cafe, and he was an artist in the same way that at that point in time, I was like teaching and was like learning to write and all that kind of stuff. So it was not. We were a writer and artist in spirit and affirmations, I guess. But I wanted to write a story every day, and we had this mutual friend who was like, "Oh, hey, why don't you write it online? Why don't you do it online?" And then Nikita he wanted to practice his art. So he was like, "Okay, how about you write a story every day, and I'll read that story and make a picture for it, and like
Nice.
and like draw a picture." And so we created this project. It was called Flash 365, and we just started writing and started doing it like every day. I think it still like lives on the internet somewhere. But it actually got like quite a good amount of attention, especially in St. Petersburg, because I was writing a lot of like magical realism based in Russia. So a
Nice.
lot of Russians who were like interested in English would start reading it. So we were like interviewed in a bunch of local papers, and then in Medusa, which was like a big national paper, and then that had and so I started doing readings all around the city, like Nikita and
Nice.
I, and it kind of like absorbed our whole life doing this like year-long project. And then online, it was because we did it through WordPress, and like they featured a couple of our stories when they used to have their Discover. This is before kind of like
Yeah.
what the internet is now. It was very much in the days when you could still get a lot of attention, blogging,
Yeah.
and so. So by the end, we had a pretty good audience, of people who were reading and they really liked our story. And I had this kind of like ridiculous backstory that, it was just I'd fallen out of an airplane on top of Nikita, and that we were like stitched together, and we had this like small like servant child named Sasha who just we forced to write these stories and make pictures for us online. It was all very demented. But it was all based off of like my day-to-day experiences there. So I would write the story based off of what would happen. So that was also something like, so a lot of people, if they would meet me, they would show up in the story in some way or another, and we ended up doing like a radio program. I don't know, it was a lot of fun. I think I remember that
Imagine,
time
yeah,
fondly.
imagine that's
Uh,
amazing practice to be writing a story every day, like to get 365 stories done. You must have
it,
learned an awful lot.
I did learn an awful. When I started, like I think about like I learned so much more about my style and how to construct a story and write, and it's um, than when I had first started it. Like I was always writing, but I had always been writing books. Like I probably have like four or five. It's like first drafts of books that I was like writing in my 20s that I was into, but I only started writing really the short stories, like the short stuff when I started doing that project. Someday I'll go back to the books and go back to a lot of those stories. And in that time, I started submitting some again. I would if I had a story, so like coming off of that, because there was this kind of, and again, I've learned so much now. But there was a publisher who had contacted us, and they wanted to publish a collection of the stories. So when we finished, they were like, "We want to publish like the flash fiction stories that you did." And I didn't really know what we were going to do with them, so I sent them this thing that I had worked on, which was kind of like a novella in verse ish. It was
Mm,
basically like a what I would later learn is kind of like a auto fiction, but like magical realism. So it was
yeah,
like a magical realism story that was also a poem, and it's just like it's funny and it's not, it's I think it's like 11,000 words. But they ended up signing and wanting to print the book. So Nikita
nice.
illustrated it. We did this whole thing, and then after our project ended, one of the things that Nikita and I are always fighting about is Nikita's a perfectionist in the best possible way. And he's one of the few people who can actually make perfect things when he's a perfectionist, which makes it all the more difficult because when he doesn't think it's like perfect. But we went through like a whole struggle. It ended up being like 6 to 8 months after the project ended that like, finally the book came out, and the publisher was very inexperienced and, kind of wound up with it was like a year. It was fun. It was a learning process. Definitely learned a
Yeah,
lot. But by that time, like the way the internet works is if you lose that momentum and then
mm,
you lose, and then kind of like you don't have a product that you really feel proud of, it's really easy for all of that to sort of unravel. And through that program, I started writing a column for a Russian newspaper. And then I got a lot more into writing online more for money. So I started writing for a lot of kind of like commercial outlets. And then I wrote a lot on Medium back when Medium was, you could actually make really good money on Medium.
yeah,
Um, and like, we worked in kind of like, we started working in emerging tech and like content marketing. I was producer for a while, and that all kind of like life took away from that project. And then that project sort of um, fizzled out. The book still exists. I've debated now whether or not I would pull it because I
yeah,
can. Like I know, I still know the publisher. The publisher went under, but like I still have the contact. And if I could have them pull it, but I have kind of like a sentimentality about it. And
yeah,
so we'll see. It depends on what I end up doing after Chill Sims. If when I get back into writing. But I went through like a whole bunch of health problems and I had to leave, I ended up leaving Russia. I had like surgery and a whole bunch of things. And then when I started getting back into writing, after that, it was writing creatively because I was just kind of like writing for work. And
yeah,
then that's when I started submitting more again, and I was like submitting like quite heavily, and I was building out, and I actually started a publication called like Fish Food that was all about like submission opportunities in publishing. And Becky Took writes this newsletter, Lit Mag News, and I had subscribed to it, and and she published a piece of mine that I wrote about submitting because I was, it was like 6 no bullshit steps to like submitting your work. And so she has a thing where she comps you a subscription if she publishes you. And so I had that subscription, and she had an interview with Karina, who had just launched Chill Subs.
Nice.
And so I saw that interview, and I just emailed Karina like huge long emails about how cool I thought it was and all of these ideas I had. And I was so happy because I think I felt very much on the outside of like literary journals,
Mm.
because I'm not a particularly academic minded person. I felt like there was like this big, I don't know. I don't know what, kind of, I just thought that it was like a bit of a loftier
Mm.
pursuit that just like didn't necessarily like, fit what I was looking to do with writing. Um, and then, once I got into it, realized that was totally wrong. And the whole vibe, which is one of the reasons why it became so big, is because it turns out that you have a lot of people who feel that way, a lot of people who feel like, oh, there's the gatekeeping atmosphere around like literary journals. And then when
Mm.
we work a lot with editors, you realize like editors on the other side, and they want to be more accessible. They want more
Mm.
people to like come in. They want to create, and just realizing there was this gap there. And I think that, partially something like Duotrope, when I was using it, felt like that. It felt like I was, there was this faceless wall between me and getting published.
Yeah.
Um, and then like Chill Subs just felt like it was totally breaking down that barrier and being like, hey, fuck it, this is weird and can be fun and is just like frustrating, and everybody is here kind of like wanting to find success in this, and it's really hard to know exactly what to do because it's such a weird niche industry with all of its own terms and all of these like unspoken rules. So then, yeah, so then she emailed me back. It was like super, super long email, and I would email her, and that we went back and forth like that for about a month. And then we created a Slack channel, and then we kind of she was just like, hey, do you want to? We were like, let's just build this thing together. And our original goal was actually just to build it up, and kind of like create a business plan and a pitch deck, because we were going for like a startup visa to the UK
Yeah.
was the original plan. And then to kind of like uh, do that. But then the more we worked on it, it just grew bigger and bigger over the next few months. Really, we both quit our jobs to work full time on it, and then it really started to build into something. And we talked to a couple people, and they were like, like, don't take investors, don't go the startup route. You actually have something that you could build, that you could have full control over and turn into like a good company. We were like, okay. And we're like, okay. So we were like, okay. So for the next, we didn't start making any like personal salaries on it for at least 2.5 years. And even then it was like, I think it was like $500, $1,000, like when we were able to like afford to pay ourselves.
Yeah.
We've only been able to like start making a living, I think, the past year. So yeah, it's kind of how it's how I started and how that's going to this. And then as to like now, no, I don't so I don't write as much creatively anymore because we have an ungodly amount of work to do all of the time. And I manage all of like a lot of the operations and do a lot of the project management. So, when I'm not, and also my partner, she does all the business admin, and she runs the Forever Workshop as well. And she manages like the social media. So like we have, our life is pretty consumed by the company.
Yeah.
So we don't, when I have time that isn't, I just want to just like go and see some friends, or like go out. We get into like, antiquing stuff. I feel a little, off, but I have a huge catalog of like stories and work. And I also find that because now Show Subs is quite a, in terms of promotion and publicity, like we have a big platform for any magazine or for most magazines. And I think that I wouldn't want to put a magazine in a position where they would feel obligated to do anything for me because like I'm submitting to
Yeah.
them and
Yeah.
then they're talking to me about a list that we're collaborating on. It just feels inappropriate. So I don't submit anymore. And I think if I were to get back into it again, I definitely have learned because I did write poetry and prose poetry and was kind of thinking about MFA for a while. I think I learned that what makes me happy and what I like to write is more like magical realism and science fiction and fantasy. And I love a good prose poem. I do. I love like, but mine are always a little weird. And I like that. I like the kind of like
Yeah.
the sort of weird offbeat stuff. I realized like very literary work. I can appreciate it, but it's not like something that I read. Like we get, like the pushcart anthologies and the best American like short stories, and we read them just to kind of like keep up to date on that stuff. But it's never the kind of things where I'm like, oh, I'm gonna read this. I find
Yeah.
myself, like going back. Like I just reread. I don't know if you know Susanna Clark, but I just went and reread like Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. I just love that book. And I
Yeah.
never reread. I don't usually like reread a book, but I had just been reading so much literary stuff. I just wanted to be immersed in like
A
a
break.
world that I loved. Like,
Yeah.
I was like, just let me let go for a while.
Yeah.
So I think, yeah, I think I would probably use a pen name and I would write science fiction, fantasy, and pursue more that type of style of magazine.
Nice. That's really cool. So I imagine you've learned an awful lot about the publishing industry in this job. Like what kind of things have sort of surprised you the most?
Um, I think how dysfunctional it all is in a very adorable way.
Yeah.
Um, it's a lot of it's just people everywhere. Like so much of it is people. There's very a lot of the there's not it's not like in some industries where it's like there's a huge amount of programs and tech involved that, connect different aspects. It's just like this person has a book and they give it to this person and they have to impress this like, level of person who is like, yes, I like that book. And then this person has to go to another person and like
Mm,
impress that person. And then they have to take a whole group of people and spend like 3 fucking years like getting it out there, and it's just like this whole thing. Or you see like magazines where you're like, wow, there's this amazing prestigious magazine that, everyone wants to get into that can make or break your career. And it's just like 7 university students who are underfunded, who like have one like overworked advisor, who are desperately trying to do this while fighting with the university to keep their funding. And they're like putting it all together. And you're on the other end where you're like, I just poured my heart and soul into this story. And then it's
yeah.
being sent off to a person who's just kind of like on the other end being like, fuck, 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 like just getting through their day. My parents, there was like an essay somebody was writing for us where they were like, he every time he submits a piece, yeah, it's Maurice Ruffin, I think is who it was who was saying this, where he always submits it to like 19 different places, like a minimum of 19 every time he has a piece. Because he's like, these people are going to reject it because they aren't they haven't had lunch yet, and so they're hungry, and so they're just going to be bothered by it. And these people over here, they're going to be like too full and have a bellyache, so they're not going to publish you. And then for these people, it's just not going to fit like the theme, or these people left their submission open window. It's just there are so many different reasons why you're going to get rejected in like
Yeah.
any of these things, and there's no systematic approach. And it's even with all of the terms that we have where it's part of what makes it so confusing as a writer, because you're like, people are like, no, previously published, and then they're like, but it was on my social media. Oh, that's okay. And it's like,
Yeah.
wait, what is it? There's
There's some
there's
other ones
no
like no simultaneous submissions. People
that's
probably have seen that one, and that's just like means that you can't sub more than one place, isn't it? What are
yeah,
the other
yeah.
ones that sort of like that sort of annoy you?
So a big one for me is previously published. So a big
Yeah.
so it's simultaneous submissions. And again, this is also like a lot of writers. A lot of writers don't even listen to the simultaneous submissions because the possibility that you're going to get accepted to like 2 amazing places on the same exact day is just infinitesimal. Like it's just not going to happen. But
Yeah.
there's people who have, and like they care, and there's that thing, like some people, um where it's like, yeah, it's their ball game, right? Like if you want to go to that magazine and like that's the who that person is and they really care about that kind of stuff, then that's a risk you take. I always tell people it's kind of like the literary space is a lot like my accountant, right? So I'll have an accountant and I'll ask like, is this okay? Like, can I do this? And he goes, well, what's your risk tolerance? Right? Because it's like it is so here's what can happen if like,
Yeah.
say like the IRS were to like audit you or something like that. Like if you do this and it's just like I know it's so American tax system is a hilarious mess of like just dog shit and crime. Because basically everyone is just like trying their best and most people are like lying and it's like a Hunger Games style thing where it's just like every year we sacrifice a couple of people and businesses to the IRS to just keep the system going because it's just a mess. I don't know how anybody follows it. Accountants are hilarious, but every accountant I've ever had has always been like a little crooked,
Yeah.
like is just like a little bit like,
They're
hey,
the ones you
if
need
you
though.
yeah, oh no, exactly. Right. No, I know they're my favorite types of accountants. But I always tell people like with submitting, it's very similar. It's very similar. So it's like, okay, do you follow the simultaneous submission rules? And it's like, what's your risk tolerance, right? Like if you're going to submit to all these different places, the number of places that have no simultaneous submissions are very few. A lot of times it's like, so like what are the chances that you're gonna, something's gonna be accepted out there? It's very, very small. But if you're the type of person who really worries about that thing, or if you just want to respect that journal's, policies, then don't submit. But if you're the type of person who has a bit of risk tolerance, go for it. Like that's kind of, and it's the same thing with previously published. I think a lot of the standards in the industry are very outdated. They come from a time, like all of these rules come from a time when you were like mailing your manuscript to one of like 16 magazines. And it's just like, yeah, like there's a reason why those things kind of like were implemented. Cover letters are a good example of that. Nobody reads a fucking cover letter. No one. No, okay, maybe like 6% of editors are reading a cover letter when a story is submitted, but writers obsess over them. Like
Yeah.
I hear all the time, people ask all the time, like, what do I put in my cover letter? It's like genuinely, they are almost never read. They are just not like in the beginning. There are journals that will, but usually those journals say it in their guidelines. They'll say like, hey, we like read them, but like especially when you're submitting somewhere like the Sun, right? The Sun gets like 3,000 submissions a month. Nobody's in there like reading. They got like 3 readers. I mean, maybe they are. Maybe there's one editor at this. I don't want to like speak for them. Like maybe there's one there who's like I read every cover letter and great.
Yeah.
But like the number, because I've been published in quite a lot of places, and like most of the time, like my bio is in my cover letter that they say has to be there. But then when they're going to publish my work, they ask me for a bio every
Yeah.
fucking time. And it's like
Yeah.
because nobody is even reading the cover letter. That's like
Yeah.
one of Pepe's. But actually, on the website, we have a cover letter generator that is just a template that just helps people. Like the reason why we have it as a template is because it's just like stop overthinking. Like
Yeah.
just don't overthink. If if there is, I always like to think if there's anything, any connection or anything impressive enough about you as a writer that could be in a cover letter to impress an editor, you wouldn't be going through the slush pile. Which it sounds like
You get a bit of a head start, don't you? Like if you've got an agent, for example, and you've been published, or if you George R. Martin, for example, submitting through
exactly.
Moksha.
It, yes, yes, that's exactly what I mean. Is that like if your writing career is at the point where like what is in your cover letter matters, you're not submitting. You're not
Mm,
doing that. Your agent is like talking to the magazine, or this magazine is inviting you to submit. Like that's just how it works. And like same thing, like so previously published, the internet is a huge dumpster fire. Like if you published a version of this story on Instagram 6 years ago, and like that's not previously published. I know that that's and that but that's kind of like a personal pet peeve of mine. Like especially if you take it down, it doesn't exist anymore. Like it's not in like a written form.
mm.
I have a piece coming out in the Forever Workshop that kind of like dances around this, and is a little more delicate in how I frame it. Um, But that's, I would say that's a pretty outdated, it's just like the internet in general. It's an outdated concept because who is out there? Like, because conceptually, like why is previously published matter is like because you don't want people to have read the work or when people are looking for the work. But if it's been completely erased from the internet, nobody is going to a magazine reading a story and then being like, oh, but I could read this on the Wayback Machine. It's like, fucking no, like nobody's doing that.
That
Like, why
website's
are we?
always down anyway.
Yeah. Like if it's in another magazine, like I get it, right? Like, and that's what it used to be. Like, that's the thing
Mm.
about previously published. It made sense in a time when if your thing was published, it was published in a magazine. When that rule was created, it's like don't have a moose on an airplane in Alaska or whatever bullshit laws, like in the,
Yeah.
sorry, that's a thing in the United States. We have these weird laws that are just lingering from like the 1800s and they're always kind of silly. But people previously published is like that, where it's like it made total sense when you're talking about like magazines wanting to have exclusive rights to people's work. It makes a lot less sense when someone's like, "Hey, I emailed this to my mom," and they're like, "Well, no," and it's just it's one of so there is no agreed upon rules in publishing, and so that's something that definitely like having learned about it like I was happiest writing online when I was self-publishing my work. When I was just publishing it on a blog and writing something I loved and engaging with like an audience. And a lot of what I tell writers is that it's a mix. Like you want to have a mix of that. Like don't hold on to everything and like and so like it doesn't get out there and like only put it out there if it goes out in a literary magazine because you might even end up settling for a magazine where it's like on your own like we by the end we had about like 5,000 readers on the blog and different amounts at any given day but like we had a substantial thing where I put out a story and within by the end of the day anywhere from 3 to 500 people would have read it and then people would then read it on throughout the week and I think about sometimes with like a magazine where somebody wants something in a magazine so bad that they're not building their own brand and not building their own ecosystem that kind of like helps with their career because when someone is going if your goal is to be a traditional publishing path and they want to go like towards an agent is going to look at what your presence is online. They're not going to care if you were published in this journal that sometimes these journals will have 10 readers, and
Yeah.
it doesn't matter that even these crazy popular, really huge journals who are like very prestigious, and then all of a sudden they come out with a new issue and like 40 people buy it. And it's like,
Yeah.
so there's a part of like you want to have traditional accolades. Like if you're going to kind of like pursue the career in one way or the other. Science fiction and fantasy magazines don't have this problem. It's one of the reasons why most of them don't have submission fees is because a lot of people support science fiction and fantasy magazines and they do get like a good amount of money from like readership and Patreon and they're also innovating more. They're often in like Kickstarter and they're doing that sort of
Hmm.
thing, which I always really like to see. We had an interview with Neil from Clarksworld
Nice.
and kind of like went through. We did like a live interview with him. We have a written interview all in like a sub club, and a lot of it is kind of just like what can literary magazines learn from the science fiction world just because like it's much better at getting readers. Um,
So what did Neil
but
say then?
I forget some of the I can send you the link to the interview. But
Yeah, we
he
can put
did
it in the
have some good
description.
advice and he had some kind of like good stories and some things that happened with Clark's World. I think something they got hit really hard with something with Amazon. They lost all of their subscribers. They got totally like wrecked at one point in time because they were going through the Amazon like printing services, and Amazon
Yeah.
like held on to their subscribers.
All right.
And then when Amazon like changed their policies, because I think you could get it on Kindle for a while, and then when they changed that, they locked Clarksworld out of their like emails and their like customer base. And then somebody published something on Reddit, and it like and Clarksville got like I think they were gonna have to shut down. And then but then they got like a huge influx of people who supported them through Patreon. And I think they have like a very strong Patreon now.
Nice.
Um, Yeah, like it's very which is cool. And he's interesting. Shannon handled like most of the all of the interviewing. She also is like, she's like me. We love like writing and publishing and I have like a deep interest, but like our 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 like kind of core love is for like science fiction, fantasy. She really likes horror more than I do, but
Mm,
you know, yeah, yeah.
nice. So what do you think like writers can do to give themselves the best chance of getting published?
Uh,
Now the cover
uh,
letters don't count. There's one less thing to worry about. So is there I mean, obviously formatting's probably a big one. Like this
less than you
seems,
think.
yeah. Do you think what's the sort of like sort of editor's stance about that you've seen on formatting, for example?
So we have a prose formatter on our website, and it's for like William Shun like standards.
Yeah.
So you put a story in, and you can just download like a formatted copy.
Nice.
Most editors, when I talk to them, will tell me if the story is good, that they don't care about the cover letter, they don't care about how it's formatted. They don't, I mean, to a certain extent, you don't submit it in like Comic Sans. Something that for sure I think like right off the bat, it's a level of standards. You just got to hit like have it in size 12, Times New Roman, single space, or double spaced, like on the page. That just if you hit the kind of the baseline standard, I always think about it like if it's a type of magazine that's going to reject somebody for like misspelling something, really small or like,
Yeah.
messing up on like a formatting thing, I don't really want to publish in a place like that anyway. Like,
Yeah.
people like that are very nitpicky, but it's few and far between. Like it's not as many as you would think. I would say in the people do tend to get hung up on things like formatting and cover letters. Keep the cover letter very simple is just like kind of address the editor, say what your work is and what the title is, and like the word count, give your bio, sign off. Like it's very simple. And like those are often kind of like the best practices with formatting. Keep it legible, size 12, double spaced. Especially for pros. Like and you will be okay 95% of the time. Like what it really comes down to with a magazine is, I mean, I always have it with people's goals. So I have a whole course on submitting to literary magazines. I don't know. Have you ever seen my course on it?
I don't
So
think I have
it's
actually, no.
it's called Sorry for the Inconvenience.
No,
This
that's
is
cool.
and let's see. Where is did they change? No, the workshop. So I mean, just so like if you want, if you're very curious about this stuff, I mean it's 35,000 words. I wrote it in like a frantic month. It almost killed me. Um,
Nice.
I will put it because I had agreed to it was to launch our Forever workshop. So I wrote the first workshop for our Forever workshop, and it's like 12 lessons long. And I have a whole thing in there about cover letters. I have a whole thing about anything that you can think of to do with submitting. I put in this course.
Amazing.
Um, and so yeah, yeah. So that's kind of so if people want a higher chance of success when submitting to literary magazines, hire an editor.
Yeah, great advice.
Unfortunately, like most stories, and this is a thing and this is a big, huge pet peeve of mine in writing when it comes to the way that we look at authors. Books are not written by a single genius alone in a hole somewhere. Like it's just
Yeah.
not how it works. It goes through rounds and rounds of editing. And when you're looking at somebody's short story who was published in a very prestigious place, it goes through rounds and rounds of editing. Like a lot of editors, editors of magazines. So like there's just a certain standard that they will look for when a story is coming. I got published a lot more once I started working with an editor. It doesn't have
Yeah.
to be the best editor in the world. And it's one of those things, and it's one of those things about writing in general. Writing is like a privileged profession in a lot of ways. Like the more, if you have more time and more money, you will have a greater chance at success. It's why you have a lot of people who are more involved with it who are retired. We have a lot of people who are retired who write a lot because that's when you have the time and the money to do it.
Yeah.
And like you have like younger people kind of like there's kind of like a gap in the middle where it's like, a lot of people who are, fuck, I'm busy trying to survive and do life. But if you have the means for an editor, or if you have like a submissions partner, having someone like look over your work and being open to feedback, like, and
Yeah.
being able to have thick skin and being able to like withstand rejection, like, you have to let your work, you have to be confident enough in your writing that when somebody sits there and tears it apart, you can take what's good of it and know when you disagree, so that you can say like, okay, this is actually really good advice that this person is giving me. I don't agree with this person there. And so you don't have to take every piece of advice an editor gives you, or even like a friend. But if you are unwilling to take criticism, you will fail as a writer. Like, you just will. Like, because it's just an endless sea of rejection and criticism, and knowing what you're bad at is what makes you better, because that's when you know like how to improve. Like, you're never going to improve. But I see so many writers who are and I love them for their confidence. There are so many writers who are so confident that like what they have is so good that don't they don't accept that it's like,
Mm.
it is a crap. It's like going into like going into a to dance, to do like a specific dance and not knowing any of the steps and just fucking boogieing. And I've seen
Yeah.
people who do that, and you're like, man, that's awesome. I appreciate the confidence, but this is not
This is not
this is
salsa.
not jazz. This is yeah, you're coming in to do the waltz, and you did a backflip, and it's like,
Yeah.
awesome. I love that you can do a backflip. But that's what's fucking going on here. So I like there's like I think having an editor is really important, or at least having like a friend who you trust. There's he wrote like the Art of War. John, what's his
Sun
fucking
Tzu.
no, oh, not the Art
Yeah, I
of
do.
sorry, no, not Sun Tzu, not that Art of War. Sorry, it's a uh let's see. I'll find it. It's definitely, it's a more modern novel. Stephen King. I remember Stephen King like shit on him in his crap book. Not brutally, but he made like a kind of a rude comment about him, and I always
Yeah.
thought that was like very funny. What was his name? Why won't you connect to Medium? Why did I have a Medium? There we go. All right, I did, because I've put this in a piece somewhere so I can find his name. No, it's not reference. It's like enemy at the gate. Close enough. Same thing. Why not? I'll try to find it. It's in. But anyway, yeah, I think he wrote Enemy at the Gates. He's kind of like a big like um, dad book novelist. He's right.
Yeah.
There's like great, and but it was good. But I worked for like nonprofits when I was in college, and I was go door to door to try to like raise money. I was working for the ACLU, I think, at the time. And I opened the door, and it was a guy, and he was a beautiful house. And he said, "What do you want to?" And he was like, "Oh yeah, I give every year." And he was like, "What do you want to do?" I was like, "I want to be a writer." And I was like, "So it means I'm going to be broke forever." And he was like, "I'm a writer." And he kind of like pointed at his house, and it was a
Yeah.
really nice house. And he was like, and he was like, "I'll tell you what." He's like, "I'll give you a piece of writing advice." He said, "You only let two people read your work, people who love you and people who want to profit off of you." And I was like, okay. I was like, I can see the logic in that advice. But I think that there's, I would add to that, like, if you're not going to go for like an editor, right? Like, you're going to pay an editor money. They would like profit off of like, reading your work,
Mm.
or you find somebody who loves you enough to tell you when something isn't working, or when something is bad. Because when you take a story and you go out there and you submit it to 20 places and you get back with 20 rejections, it's going to be really disheartening. So you need to be confident that what you wrote is the best in order to go out and do it again. Otherwise, it's just going to get into like a pie. You're like, oh, well, that one, then people don't understand that one. I've heard that a lot of times where it's like, oh, this was too smart for people, or
Yeah.
oh, this, like they didn't get it. And it's like, okay, but why are you writing? That's a big part of my course. Why are you writing? Why are you submitting? Like, is it for other people? Like, is it, what are you trying to accomplish? And I think that like if that's coming back over and over again, if you're not writing for people, then what's the,
Yeah.
you know, like that does like matter to some degree. Whereas it's just like, and if you walk away from every experience thinking that like, oh well, people just don't get me, it's like, oh, that's a that's a tough person to be. But I do I think a lot of editors are willing to work with people as well. I've seen that blow up in people because like a lot of editors will read something they're like and they're like I have a lot of edits, and then the writer will be like, well, go fuck yourself, and then the editor is like, oh, all right, like you know I'm oh, sorry. And it's just, again, I've worked a lot with editors. I used to work with Russian editors who are mean as hell. And they used to like when I was writing for the magazine, I would get a piece I wrote back, and there would be like 7 of them in the comments, and they are not nice. Like they're just kind of like, well, this does not make sense. This is stupid. Like this is right. And you're just like,
Yeah.
all right. Like, but that's just like their way. And I liked that. You know, it's one thing that I appreciated because it was like, you know what, you're right, this is stupid. Or if I didn't think it was stupid, I could just argue with them. And like, and that's nice. But I think now when I write something, I'm just very confident in what I write and like if I like it or if I don't like it. But then I give it to people and I have people read it and I listen
Yeah.
to what they say. And I think that that's a huge part. That's a huge part of everything. Magazines are not created alone. Books are not created alone. Movies not created alone. Like stories are not like the best stories are not one person like
No.
who's just kind of like telling a story. It's definitely that's why when you read all these books and you see the acknowledgments, it's like 30 people long because like it takes a lot. So yeah, that's what I'd say.
That's fantastic advice. Thank you very much. I've
Sure.
got one more question for you. Have you noticed any trends as we move into 2026? Has there been any shifts in publishing industry? Any calls for more types of stories? Have you noticed anything cropping up?
Going into now, I think that in the poetry world, there is a shift away from this like experimental at all costs style
Mm,
of poetry where you know there was a period of poetry like the Ocean Vuong, Kabe Akbar kind of, and they're still you know like well respected, but I think there was a time where a lot of people were like there was a lot of copycat work going on with like you know words here and here and here and here and here and here and like you know and shape poetry. Experimental poetry had a very like big moment there, and I don't see that as much now. I don't see as much kind of being. Uh, I'm really waiting for prose poetry to have its moment, but it
yeah.
is you know prose poetry I think has been having an increasing moment over the past 5 years. I think people are kind of like, oh wow, people like prose poetry a bit more. You know, like it's a bit more accessible to everybody, so I see more and more magazines accepting it. I think people run into it with prose poetry, especially early on, where it really does, you know, like there are specifics to it where you just want it to be like a full space, like brick.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm biased, you know, in that I like that. Because I don't, like I said, Shannon sees a lot more of the day-to-day submission calls now, and I do more of the. I'm not reading the guide, you know, every day, being in the trenches, so to speak, of it. Upmarket fiction, I think, is kind of losing steam in kind of like among like book publishing agents. Romantasy is having a moment for sure. Like Romantasy is a huge is having kind of like a huge moment in the in that space. Trying to think with like um, things have gotten no things have kind of I don't know. I would ask Shannon. I'd be curious what she is seeing in the calls. Like it's definitely things are less I don't want to say like charge. You know, there's definitely like a period of time where people were very specific about what they wanted.
Yeah.
And now I think there's a lot more of a we just want something good is as opposed to like there was a time where it's like we want something about this particular issue or like from this particular person and you know and it's I do see less of that now. I see more of kind of like a broad I think because people are realizing a lot. Like when it comes to a journal, like if they want their journal to be successful, they just have to publish a lot of things that people want to read.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also think we've seen this shift. There's a lot of really cool younger like magazines, like newer magazines. There's a really fun one, but like Dream World Girl Zine, which has this like, they're super into multimedia. Zines, I think, are having a moment. Actually, I would say if I had to go completely outside, not like outside our industry, but what I think is like has a really bright future is not even something I'm in. It's something my little brother is in. So my little brother is very into lit RPG and TTRPG gaming.
Yeah.
And it's like, and I see the kind of things that they are creating, and it's almost like a new form of storytelling. Or not like, like where, so he works also in like he does like podcasting and he does game design. And like they'll create these games and then they'll play the games and it's all improvised. And so they're basically playing out a story. And then that story they recorded on a podcast, and then the podcast is like this new story, and so then people are like playing out these stories. And he just had this game get released. The time we have is what's called, and basically he wrote it where I don't know if I should be flattered or concerned, but it's two brothers on either side of a door in a zombie apocalypse, but it's like in an apocalyptic setting, not necessarily
Yeah.
zombies, but basically like there's one brother who is on one side of the door, and then on the other side is a brother who got bit, essentially, and then you play the conversation between the two brothers, and it plays out through all of these different things. And then like the last question is whether or not you open the door. And it's like you play this like emotionally fucked up journey over like hour and a half through these cards of like talking to like the sibling, as they go through whatever transformation this particular apocalypse like does for them. And I'm really fascinated in that. I always think like
Sounds
that's,
amazing. Yeah.
I can't wait for like literary magazines to start accepting like submissions, and that because it's a much more communal storytelling structure too, because like it's not just like, hey, I write a story, it gets published in a magazine, you read the story. It's like I write a game that is a story, and then we play out the story together.
Together.
And like it's which I think is a big element that is missing in the literary world, is like everybody always tries to bring community in, but everybody's so competitive. Like we all really want to support each other, but we also want to support each other from a position of being successful, right? Like
Yeah.
everybody, you all want to be supported. Whereas like the lit RPG and TTRPG space is so communal, and it's all these people who are like for each other and telling stories together, which I think is super cool. And they tell
Yeah.
all these really interesting stories, and you never know where they're going to go. And I think that's a trend. I think that they're going to start, like making movies out of those games. I think that, those games you start seeing, like even when I was in like I spent some time in France and like traveled around, and like there are these stores that show up there. Like they have full stores like for this like gaming, and I would see it like all these different places. It's this, and I see it growing, especially through him, because I'll like, he'll update me, because he'll like make a game or he'll produce a game, and they do it there. It's kind of like closer to like science fiction, where they're, they do like Kickstarters and backer kits, and they like fund these games, and it's very cool. Um, so I'm really fascinated in that. I definitely think in the literary space, I think if people really want to get back to just like a really good short story. I think it's with
Mm.
people, and it's the same thing. I think it's that trend with poetry going away from experimental, is like people are kind of like, okay, we've lost a lot of the public. We've lost
Yeah.
a lot of like people who are reading, and we're never gonna make money unless people want to start like, come back and read. And I think that there's that tone has come into it. Which we'll see. But
Yeah.
yeah, we'll see
It's
we'll
all
see what goes.
interesting, isn't it?
Yeah,
All
yeah,
all
yeah, it really
changes
is.
of fuss. It's like, yeah, like you say, how people's interests and how they like to consume things is changing so quickly. So it's always worth keeping your finger on the pulse and seeing what's going on.
Oh
Well,
yeah.
Benjamin, thank you very much. It's been a fantastic chat with you. I've learned so much, and it's wonderful to hear the journey of Chill Subs and all the plans that you've got for growing even more. If anyone listening wants to find out more about you and your writing, where's the best place for them to go?
I would go to Chill Subs. It's where you can find like I purged my personal website and personal social media quite a while ago. Unfortunately, the longer that I spend on the internet, the less I want to be physically present, or virtually present. So I tend to every couple of months I have an episode and just like remove more and more of myself from just because of how much it's I don't know it's become a place for sure. So I
Yeah.
would say, Chill Subs, I have a profile there so you can see our profiles. And then, on there, it has my work, it has like links, to some of the places that have published me. So yeah, it's been a fun time. It's been a
Oh,
journey. Halfway there, halfway, maybe,
happy
hopefully halfway, hopefully not like 10% of the way. We'll see.
day. Oh, well, thank you very much again, and all the best of luck for the year ahead with Chill Subs and all your writing if you get time to do it.
Yes, yes. Thank you. I hope so.
All right, and thank you everyone for listening. Catch you soon. Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Writers Toolshed. If you'd like to join our writing community on Discord and get access to fantasy writing classes and books on Patreon, check the links in the description. And if you don't want to miss any future episodes, be sure to follow or subscribe. And to support the show, leave a quick rating on Spotify or iTunes and share this episode on social media or with anyone who you think may be interested. Thank you very much for listening.